A Jew is one of, I don't know if there's another race of people that it's a race and a religion, not just a race. So to be a Jew is you believe in, you're born into it, but it's also a religious faith. You can convert, I guess, to Judaism. They're doing that now. But back in the day, that was a promise that God made to Abraham. So all the promises it started with Abraham. And the reason why the Muslims are also the seed of Abraham is because they came out of Ishmael. They traced their roots back to Ishmael, which was also Abraham's son to the servant girl. So
how come we're not Jewish and we're Christians?
Huh?
Is that a
Well,
weird question?
no. So Jews don't believe that Christ was the Messiah. They were always looking for the Messiah, but they didn't believe Jesus was it. So we believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So that's the difference between a Christian and a Jew.
So are Israelites Jewish people? Like
Mm-hmm.
did Jesus come for the Israelites, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
No, he came for the whole world. For whosoever believeth in
right.
him.
But the people were the Israelites, right? So where does Jewish come into that?
Well,
Is
the
Israelite
Israelite is
Roman?
No. Israelite is just another name for a Jew. They're not separate. They're not different. Israel is what God changed, right? We know that the Bible says that God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So Jacob's name means supplanter or trickster, okay? That's what the name Jacob means. It's trickster. Someone who achieves through lesser means. They're achievers. Many times high achievers, but they'll do whatever they have to do to achieve. And so that's what Jacob's name means. When Jacob wrestled with God, and Jacob's ladder, right? You've heard of Jacob's ladder. He was in what was it? Bethel, and he went to sleep one night, and he had this dream, this vision, and he saw it, but it really wasn't a vision. It was like kind of, he saw into the heavenly realms. And he said, I saw this ladder with angels ascending and descending. And then one who was to be in the likeness of God himself, or a theophany. It's called a theophany. There's theophanies showed up in the Bible. In the Old Testament, it's when Jesus showed up. But of course, Jesus wasn't Jesus till he was born in a manger and given the name Jesus. But he lived before. He's always been. So he showed up as Melchizedek to Abraham in the Old Testament. He was a high priest. And it says that his origins, it said that he had no beginning and no end, right? But Abraham called him Melchizedek, and he offered a tithe and an offering to him. And that was a theophany. Okay, that was God appearing on earth before he was Jesus in human flesh. Okay, so oftentimes when God would show up and speak to people in the Old Testament, they thought they was this an angel? Is this what is this? Okay, it was a theophany. It was the representation of God himself. So that's what happens to Jacob. Jacob is wrestling with God. And Jacob says, I'm not going to let go of you until you bless me. And God says he just touched his thigh and basically put his hip out of socket or whatever. And you coming in? You can come in.
I ain't trying to walk off.
No, go ahead. Come on. Come on. Come on. We're casual. I'll take a drink break. So he wrestles with God. God dislocates his hip, causes him to limp for the rest of his life. But he realizes in that moment that it was God that he was wrestling with. And it was such a life-changing encounter that God said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but it will be Israel. So God changed Jacob's name from trickster, supplanter, deceiver, to Israel. Everybody know? Hey Siri, what does Israel mean? It means one who wrestled with God. But also blessed by God. And so Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's who the Israelites came out of. But also the Jews and the Jewish faith. And like I said, it's one of the few religions where it's a biological, it's a race, and it's also a faith. But they were always looking for the Messiah. They crucified Christ because they didn't believe he was the Messiah. And so now there are what's called Messianic Jews. A Messianic Jew is a Jew who has accepted Christ as Messiah. And they actually practice a lot of the, Judaism. There is so much, everything that the Jews practice is a reference to Christ. All of the kosher things and all of the ceremonies. Pentecost, we get the word Pentecostal. Pentecost is not a New Testament thing. Okay? Pentecost, Christians kind of, in the Western world, we have hijacked Pentecost because the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit was given to the church on the day of Pentecost, but Pentecost was a celebration. It was a Jewish festival. Penta meaning 50, so it was a once in 50 year celebration. Hey Siri, what is the Feast of Pentecost? That's not true. They're saying it's a Christian holiday. This is Wikipedia. What does that know?
In the Old Testament, it was a harvest festival known as the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot,
Yeah,
observed 50 days after Passover.
right. So, and that was because you had 7 weeks of 7, so 49, right? 7 times 7. So 7 complete weeks of 7, and then on the 50th day you had a feast celebrating the 7 weeks of 7. 49 days after Pentecost.
It was also a time to commemorate the Israelites receiving the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai. In the New Testament, Pentecost is associated with the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles.
Right.
That was in the upper room, right?
Mm-hmm. So all of those things have all of the things in Judaism, everything in the Old Testament points to Jesus. Everything points to the Messiah. This Jonah and the whale, right? That's a symbolism of Christ. In Psalms, you'll read David prophesied of Christ as Jonah was in the belly of the great fish for 3 days, so would the Messiah be in the belly of the earth. And then the resurrection. So everything that God did in the Old Testament was pointing towards Jesus. And all of the Jews knew it. Like everybody knew every celebration and every law and every rule and everything like that was always pointing towards. So you've heard the term scapegoat, right? That's a Jewish. They would. The priest would bring in. They would have a goat. And the priest, after the people had sacrificed and confessed all their sins, a priest would essentially do a ritual, take all of the sins of the people that they had confessed, anoint this goat, and then send the goat out into the middle of the wilderness. He was no longer to be part of the camp or anything, and they would release him into the wild. And that was the scapegoat. Your sins, that was a symbol of your sins being, taken away from the camp. And you put it on the head of the goat. And this is also why the satanic uses the goat as a symbol, like they love it. The wickedness was all put on the goat. So they were like, we'll take the goat. Before it meant greatest of all time. Now everybody wants to be the goat. Don't call me a goat. Especially a scapegoat. We are the sheep. We are sheep. We're stupid, but we're not supposed to be stubborn. Goats are stubborn. bullheaded. And I send you that meme where that a father gave a kid get a football helmet on, and he's like, and he's got him headbutting a goat.
He's cheering him on while he's doing it too.
So, anyways, that's our little teaching. Any other questions?
Yeah, because of Mother Day,
Mm-hmm.
I know God is called Father and so is Jesus, but should they be called Mother too, even though it's not titled?
No. So there's a reason why the Bible is very patriarchal. Patriarchal means you have matriarchs and patriarchs. Matriarchs are mothers, and you think of a monarch, right? The word monarch means king. So if you take patriarchal, and ruling, and matriarchal would be like the queen. And so you have these figures in families that, so I was talking to somebody, it might have been BJ. Is he here? Huh? Okay. So anyways, I was talking to him, and he was telling me about how his father was like the glue of the family, and like he made sure everything was whatever. You know, from grandchildren to children to nephews, and you know what I'm saying? Sometimes there's this figure in the family that's strong and wise and, you know, kind of has their act together. Not the case in a lot of our families, but in a few families. And then there's ones who are, you know, matriarchal, where it's like this woman is just the solid glue, you know, the family. She's makes sure that the family's taken care of even through 2 and 3 generations. But the Bible is very patriarchal. If you read all of the begats, you know, so and so begat so and so, and then they had 3 sons, and almost inevitably it only lists sons. Okay, it doesn't list females. On a few occasions it does. I pointed one out about Ruth, and whose Boaz, it names Rahab, the harlot, was Boaz's mother, who went from being a prostitute to being a matriarch, went from being a prostitute into having a prince. So she had to have married. She married. She married a noble person, and, you know, took up the role, and would later have Boaz, who would marry Ruth, who would, in the genealogy of Jesus, would be listed, probably the only female listed in the genealogy of Jesus. Which is unusual, because the genealogy of Jesus, if you read in Matthew, it gives his genealogy through Joseph, which Joseph wasn't even his father, right? God was his father. But again, the symbolism, even God was to the detail of who his stepfather was, that Joseph came from the lineage of David and Solomon, King David, all the way back to Abraham.
So they didn't even
Huh?
The,
No.
the genealogy listed.
No, they did. They did. But I'm saying in the writing of Jesus's genealogy, they didn't go through Mary's genealogy.
Right.
They didn't say, and Mary's mother was this or Mary's father was this, and trace the family tree through Mary.
So
They
Ruth is on the
chased
father's
it.
side.
But it was also on King David. So you have to understand, King David is the prophecies of Jesus were all about a king. Everybody after King David, the Jews, and they still fly the Star of David. That star is called the Star of David on their flag. Like David was the greatest king there ever was. He was a priest and a king. The Bible recognized him as a priest and a king. He was a completely out of the box. He was a warrior and a worshiper. He was all of these things, and so all these prophecies, because you had David, Saul was the first king, but Saul was rejected. So David was the first king of the Jews who was really after the heart of God. He was the best king. He was a prophet. He was a priest. He was a king. He was a warrior. He was a worshiper. So he was all these things. And so the prophecies of Christ all came back to the line of the king. And again, understand that all of this has to do with pointing to the future. Why? Because Christ is a king. He's the king of all kings. Right? So the Jews were always looking for this king who would be like David, who would rescue them, save their government, put them back up, defeat the Romans, slay all of their oppressors, right? And lead them in worship to God and everything. So they were always looking at that. And they got it in Jesus, but they didn't recognize it because he was not setting up a kingdom on earth. So the Bible is very patriarchal. So we'll go back to that. Why the man? Why is all this emphasis on the man? Because the man, the seed of the man is what gives the identity. Okay? Even biologically, isn't it? The man's seed determines whether or not it'll be a boy or a girl or whatever. Okay? So the man the father gives identity. A mother nurtures the identity, but the father gives it. Okay? A mother nurtures identity, but meaning comforts it, makes sure it's growing and all this and that. But the father gives the identity. We take on the father's name. What is that? Identity. And so everything about begat, and this one begat this one, and this one begat that one. What is that? That's all identity. You see, and if the devil can rob you of your identity, he's got you. If you don't know who you are, you'll be anything he tells you to be. right? And this is why what America is going through and has been going through for the past 60 years is the devil has managed to rob the family of the father through a whole lot of different means. One thing is the sexual revolution, the feminist revolution, all of that. Now, even say there's been an open attack on the African American community in that regards, as far as through whatever means, there was policies, governmental policies that divided and everything like that, but that it's statistically proven that the African American family, I'm not advocating segregation or any of those things, but the African American family was much stronger, even when we had horrible laws of segregation. At least the father was in the family, and the father was strong in the family, and the morality and the fabric of the family was way healthier, but it was way healthier across all races, with, like I said, with the rise of it's still under attack, I don't know, is friggin' June, is June Pride Month? I'm gonna have some friggin' T-shirts made that say, no, you're thinking about June 19th as an African American day when you celebrate that's when Texas was like Texas was the last state to abolish slavery, and it was actually implemented. So you had the abolition of slavery with Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation, but not all the states ratified it or accepted it or even released it. And I think June 19th was, am I right? June 19th was like kind of the last holdout, and I think it was Texas that that finally like recognized the Emancipation Proclamation. So that's June 19th. This Pride Month is a gay thing, and again, that's just, I'm gonna have some T-shirts made. I saw one that said, thank a heterosexual that you're alive today.
The Bible, is completely opposite of a lot of these modern postmodernism thoughts and theories.
Mm-hmm.
There's a direct contradiction between that and the Bible.
Right.
How do you choose? Do you pick your battles? Do you always stand? How do you react to that? How do you look at it?
Well, so you live. So that's a good question. You live your faith, and you live it, and you live the truth, and you live it with love. So, Jesus was the Word. So he said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. But at the same time, he didn't get caught up in arguing with people because, again, arguments only exist because someone has a made up mind. Okay? I'm not, your mind's already made up. Now, if you have an open mind, then but you have to when you're opposing, just to oppose someone for the purpose of opposing them because they have a different belief is you're not supposed, okay, so you can write this down. We're not supposed to oppose people. We're supposed to win people. So we're not supposed to oppose people. We're supposed to win people. And I'm not supposed to win arguments. I'm supposed to win people. You can win an argument and lose a person. And that's usually how it happens. So you lead with love. So talking about argument, we'll get back to the patriarchal thing here. I just want to give you a few nuggets in argument. So what was I saying? You can win an argument and lose a person. Write this down. Grace to the humble, the law to the proud. Law to the proud, grace to the humble. This is what Jesus did. Anytime somebody was humble, he treated them with grace. He like you see him. He worked with them. They came. They had a humble approach, and he was always showed them grace and mercy.
Definition of humble is being teachable, correct?
Teachable, desirous to understand. And so he never beat anybody over the head. He never came off strong to anybody who truly in their heart wanted to understand and wanted to learn. But people that would always come to him and they already had a made up mind, they already knew they were right and they were trying to oppose him, and it was just for the sake of argument, he was brutal.
Yeah, he was.
For one thing, he knew he wasn't going to win them because they had no intention of being won. They had no intention of learning or wanting to understand. He would say, "You generation of vipers, you whitewashed tombs." He let the rich young ruler walk away. Eventually, he started him out with grace. But in the rich young rulers, as he was presenting it, all of his responses were proud. I've done that since my youth. I haven't broken any of the laws, never, not once. I'm well taught and well trained. And so then he said, well, give everything to the poor, But really, that was even just a presentation of you violated the first two things. The first, you think that you're following all the commandments, but the two greatest commandments, love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, he wanted to know what he could do to inherit. His question was, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Well, if inheriting eternal life is your highest priority, then giving away all your riches, you would do it. If it was spending the rest of eternity with God, then riches wouldn't hold you back. So he didn't love the Lord. He wasn't following. He was a liar. He didn't obey the first commandment, which is love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and everything. Because he couldn't walk away from his riches. Then he also violated love your neighbor as yourself. Because when he was told to give away all of his riches to his neighbor, he couldn't do that either. So he thought he was something that he wasn't. In his confession, he professed that he kept all the 10 Commandments. And in that one request that Jesus made of him, it proved that he didn't. And Jesus was okay with that. Jesus is okay with having people walk away. He didn't chase after them. In his last, Herod is accusing Jesus. He's absolutely perfect, has never done anything wrong, and he didn't even utter a word. He was completely silent. He did not defend himself. He did not argue. He didn't do any of that. So, really, to answer your question, you have to be Spirit-led, but the Spirit's always going to lead you in love, right? And now, there's some things that you're called to love your community, and you're called to love your family, and you're called to love these things, and sometimes you have to stand up for that, because wickedness, it's not love to allow wickedness to prevail. It's not love to allow, to allow the devil and wickedness to come into your family and just be open. Oh, we just love, just come on in now. I will counsel mothers and fathers alike. But when you have children, you have a job. Getting back to, thank you, Jesus. We'll weave it back into the family, the matriarch and the patriarch. What a father does is he gives identity. The father gives personage. I have P's that represent 4, I think it's 4 P's. You can write it down. So he gives personage, personality, the personhood comes from the father. And the mother nurtures that personhood, but the father gives the personhood, gives the identity. Then the other thing the father does is he provides. Another P. He provides. It's not the mother's job to provide. Again, hers job is to manage the provision. It's the father's job to get the provision. That's how it's been from caveman time. That's how it is in the animal kingdom. Usually. It's the father's the hunter that brings it back to the nest, brings it back to the den, whatever, and the mother divides it between the cubs, makes sure that, right? So, what did I say? Provide?
Personality.
Right.
Personage.
The personage. The prodigy. Have you heard the word prodigy? Procreate. This is it's the seed. Okay? So all those P words. Procreate, progeny, personhood. That all speaks to identity. Where did you come from? What tribe are you a part of? What's your origin? That's the Father. Father gives that, okay? The identity. If your name is Tanner, guess what you were? Your father skinned animals and tanned them. He made leather products. If your name's Miller, guess what? Your name's Miller because your father somewhere back in your family tree, there was a miller is a person who is a manufacturer, a craftsman. Milliner is someone who makes hats. And so like almost all these, Smith was just got shortened from blacksmith or all the other Smiths. That Smith means a trade, right? So anyways, all of those, I'm just saying, the last name, that's identity, it comes from the Father. Okay? So
Is it wrong to put a woman's last name on her child? Two of my children have my last name.
no,
Is that
not
totally
wrong.
their lineage or
No, it's not wrong. It's sad that there's not a father there to give the identity, to contribute. When a mother has to do both, it's a daunting task, and it's not, it's not as effective. So they've done studies. This is a study. They've done studies that children raised, and again, this is nothing against mothers, but children that are raised in a single family home, children that are raised in a two-parent home have the best outcomes as far as not going to jail, higher test scores in school and everything like that, right? Higher earning potential generally, things like that, two-parent home. They also did a study in comparing single-parent homes. Single-parent home where a child was raised by a father versus child raised by a mother. Now, there's like probably 10 times more children who are in single-family mother homes. So single-family father homes are less of a thing. But when they compared the children raised in a single in a single parent father home, they scored almost as high. There was hardly any difference in them and a two-parent home. And again, it's not as common, so it's more of a rarity. But then again, that's no slight against the mother. It just talks to you about just how much identity does. See, a father challenges. A mother comforts. You will always be better off in your future. Your future will always, you will always be better. You will have better results and better outcomes if you're challenged more than comfort. If you can rise to the challenge, you will always be better off. Okay? And so that's the key component, is that it's in a man's nature to challenge. Walk it off. Get up. You're not hurt. Mom's like, oh, come here, you poor thing, you baby.
Unless you got all boys and you're like...
All right? And so that was the reason for those, that, because fathers challenge. So what would we say? Provide, right? So we have provision. Then we have a father protects. So a father gives protection, which speaks to security. Okay? So provision and protection speak to security. The biggest thing with children nowadays is they feel very insecure. They don't know if they're coming or going. They don't know what tomorrow holds, what tomorrow brings. Well, you know, are we getting evicted or are we not? There's a whole thing in impoverished communities where there's, you know, people are moving from apartment to apartment, room to room, house to house, whatever, and there's a whole charity that gives children suitcases. It's sad, because most of these kids are just throw all your belongings in a garbage bag and drag it to the next place. Or we're going to be homeless, or we're going to be sleeping in over here at Aunt Ruth's house or this person's house, and and that happens like every month. The children are throwing stuff in a garbage bag and taking all their belongings, fit in a garbage bag. And we're moving out of this motel, we got evicted from this motel, and we're going into another. That's just that just crushes. That crushes when when we're not secure. And this is what I teach parents. Some of you are children need security. Giving them things and giving them stuff when they cry is not even what they want. They don't want that. They want to know that they're safe. They want to know that there's some boundaries that are immovable. They want to know that when they're within this, they want to know when they hear the sound of this voice that it's absolute. See, and when you give in to them when they cry, then your voice is not the absolute voice. Your voice is not a consistent voice. And what does that do? That erodes at their security. When they don't feel secure, then they're unstable. So it doesn't matter how much you give them, it doesn't matter. They know that this is an up and down roller coaster. It depends on how loud I cry, stuff changes. Do you understand? Well, usually it's generally in the heart of the father. I mean, he's a hard-hearted. Men are generally not emotional. So when a child cries and whimpers and tries to pull that stuff, the man's going to be, a man's heart isn't moved like a woman's heart is. But what does that do? That gives stability. And that's a lot of times that's what the kids will do. I asked Dad, he said no. Well, but you know what? I'm going to go cry to Mama. And Mama will give in. That does nothing for the child. Absolutely nothing. Trust me, they would rather feel safe knowing that there's an absolute. Yes is yes, no is no. This is what we do on Mondays. This is what we do. You ain't pulling this crap on me that you have a headache, you have a fever, you have a sniffle, and baby, you can stay home and you're not going to school. No, it's Monday, you're going to school. You know what time it is. It's Sunday, you're going to church. We're going to church. And they fuss, and I don't want to, and everything like that. But can I tell you what? They will be the better kid for it. Why? Because now they know where the boundaries are. Now they know they're protected, provided for, they're safe, and they're secure, and they can think, and as long as it's within this context, and as long as they have Father's approval and say so, he's got their back. See, most of the homes where it's one way or another or whatever, you know what, the kids can run all night. They can get over on their mom. They know when they're a teenager that there's no heavy hand. There's nothing there that's going to stop them. They just give in and do what they want and do what they feel, and always seeking comfort. Because they don't even know what the strength of boundaries and structure. But there's nothing that's built unless there's a firm foundation and there's strong walls and strong boundaries to keep stuff in and to keep stuff out. Otherwise, it's just wind, and it's a house of cards that's built on shifting sand, right? So the Father creates security, creates structure. Listen, everybody that's here, your number one thing is that for the most part, you didn't have that. You didn't have an authority that challenged you, pointed you in the right way, and that was yes, and this is how it's going to be done. And there's somebody that you answer to. You might have had it. The flip side of that is it becomes abusive, where the Father is heavy-handed, and he's crushing, and he's punitive. Okay? That's not good either. Because that gives you a false sense of identity as well. That makes you insecure. You don't know what to expect. I can't even, in my house, if you spilt milk, you probably were going to get a backhand, knuckles backwards, harsh. So, that's not healthy either. But going back to it, so we've got provision, protection, and the personage, the identity. And when all those things are in place, children and even the next generation is secure. You understand? The next generation is secure because they had a model. And then it says a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. The Bible speaks of God, the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The children of Israel wandered in the desert for 40 years because grandma and grandpa had to die. Because grandma and grandpa's voice was a slave voice. Grandma and grandpa knew Egypt. Grandma and grandpa couldn't relate to the promised land. So they wandered in the desert for 40 years. One of the main reasons for that was so those old voices wouldn't come into the new land of liberty. Those old voices were the voices that complained in the desert. Just take us back to Egypt. We were better off back there. All right? I mean, God loved them, but God had to raise up a Joshua generation. And so you listen, that's a two-edged sword. I fear for when grandpa and grandma go off the earth. Because these new grandma and grandpas, geez, they don't know nothing about hard times. They don't know nothing about... I was reading a thing about, it said if you were born in 1900, right at 1900, if you were born that year, and you think those people just died off, let's say they lived 80 years or 70 years. Do you know what they went? Do you know what you saw and what you experienced and what you lived through? And what perspective you had? They went through the First World War. They went through from horse and buggy to automobile. Then they went through one World War, two World Wars, Vietnam War, Korean War. The Great Depression hits, the crash of the stock market, the rise of the space age, flight, airplanes. They started out with horse and buggies, and before they were flying on a jet plane. Then the Vietnam War, witnessed the Holocaust, witnessed plagues that wiped out millions of people. I mean, 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Like, there's not a person alive living through anything like that now. And that's not to say like everybody who was killed in the war. That was just 6 million Jews that were killed. Let alone all of the men and everything that died on, in battle. So they went through all of that. The Great Depression, the Great Famine, what is it? The Dust Bowl. They went through, all of the diseases of polio and tuberculosis, and everything that would just kill people, wipe out whole things, because there was no medicines and vaccines and everything like that. So our grandparents lived through a lot of that. Now, somebody gets offended in school over some T-shirt that someone else is wearing, and we're kicking kids out of school. We're changing policies and everything because we don't want somebody to be offended. And we're gonna have all of our grandparents have now have freaking ball bearings and piercings in all parts of their bodies, and the thought of what is right and what is normal is just, we didn't grow up on farms, and we didn't grow up in two-parent homes, and we didn't grow up with, everything is twisted. Everything is twisted nowadays. What's your pronoun? People are freaking fighting over pronouns. Like that's what we're fighting over now. Our grandparents fought over whether or not you're going to live tomorrow, whether or not you're going to be put in a gas chamber, and we're fighting over, whether or not a man can dress in a bikini and march down Main Street in high heels. Whether or not we want, it's even in our freaking churches. We got Miss Penny. Today, children, because it's Pride Month, we got one of our students from the seminary to come and give a dissertation to all the children this morning. It's Miss Penny Cost. Her name, even though she has a beard. Don't let that fool you, children. I ain't making this up. I'll pull it up on YouTube right now. In church. Freaking drag queen preacher talking to the children about what pronouns we should use in church with a bearded lady. Like I said, it might be a bad thing when Grandma and Grandpa leave the earth. And you don't hear anymore, well, back in my day, right? Boy, when the street lights come on, you're in this house. And there's somebody in the house to make sure you're in the house. Right? Sunday dinner being made. I don't know who's making Sunday dinner now. We don't do it. Right? We don't gather around the table. Hey, we're all going to church. We don't plan things on Sunday, not Sunday morning, because we're all going to be in the house of God. And then we're going to be eating around Mama's table, and Uncle's going to be there, and Granddad's going to be there, and Dad's going to be there. You start losing that stuff. We're in a world of hurt. Why? What does that speak to? That's that identity. That's that security. That's that tribe. You've got a whole, even if they're past. I'm just telling you, and it's sad. because I generally say this, you don't know, because there's a ton of people that just don't know the security of what that means to be able to stand on something, to stand on an identity, to stand on a name, to have a root, to be able to say, I can go back there, and that's a safe place. If I hit hard times, I know I can call, I have this matriarch and this patriarch. I have something solid I can lean on. I have a father who will take me in. I have someone I can call. I have a home I can go back to, even if I'm 40. Right? There's something that does not shift. There's something in my life that is an immovable, almost like a guarantee. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes those people are like they're hard-headed, they're whatever, but it's like, thank God, like, you know, I know I can count on him. You know, I know he's not going to tell me what I want to hear, but he's going to be there for me, and he's going to tell me what I know I need to hear. And he'll also be there for me when I'm ready to do what I know that I have to do. We're losing that. And for some of you, you never have had it at all. But here's the deal. You can be that for the next person. You can be that.
It's a heavy weight to be that. So many.
Rahab was that. Again, obviously, she went from being this prostitute to being the only female named in the lineage of Jesus. That God made sure that that turnaround and that change and that generational curse was broken and something new got started. And I'm just saying, you got to have that mindset. You got to value things. So for children, and I'll leave it for this, for children, you have to give them what is priceless. Do not give them stuff money can buy, and not give them stuff that money can't buy. Do not give your children stuff that money can buy, and not give them stuff that money can't buy. They will be screwed up.
What do you mean of that when you say give them stuff money can't buy?
Money can't buy security. Money can't buy somebody who says yes is yes and no is no. You can't buy my conviction. You can't buy my faith. See, we're not giving them faith, but we'll give them tennis shoes. We're not giving them security, but, we'll get them a new phone. Really, you should take the phone away, because the phone makes them insecure, and the phone lets actually all kinds of wolves and everything in their life, and they probably shouldn't have it till they're 16, and all that stuff should be limited, because we're not giving them protection, but we're giving them stuff that money can buy. When they're old enough, let them go buy what they want to. Your job is to give them the money stuff can't buy.
If that's the case, Pastor, just as, and you don't even have to be a parent. It can be for any child. I'm just saying on the parent side thing. Do you think it's better to just tell your child the truth instead of just like go ahead and tell them everything about the world and why, instead of just saying no because I said so? So like what you said about the cell phone, which could be a perfect.
Yeah, it's better. It's better. I grew up from the era, Exactly. No. Why? Because I said so. That that's kind of an authoritarian answer, dictator. I mean, it's, I didn't do it. I watched my nieces do that with their children, and I think they're well, I won't say because I'm being recorded. I didn't do it with my kids. It makes you a tougher kid, but it also can jack you up in many ways. Because tough isn't always the answer and is not always the appropriate response, that a child needs to have. So if you can teach a child and make them understand and explain things to them, or make them think for themselves, and give them answers or whatever that make them think and make them come up to the conclusions, that's a much better way. Most parents aren't taught how to do that. Kids don't come with owner manuals, so most of us are teaching our kids the way it was taught to us, which is not always good. But when you recognize it, you got to get some new tools yourself. Usually the parent needs to learn first. Don't expect to be able to teach your children something that you haven't even learned. You can try, but more is caught than taught. You need to remember that. They're going to learn more, they're learning all the time just by watching. So you can say what you want to say. I was telling BJ, I was saying, I said, everybody, all you students, you have the answers to all your solutions. Every one of us are here because we have problems and we have dysfunctions and all this and that. But you have all the answers. And the answers, the way for some of you need to come up with them is, if you had a child who was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13, and you're thinking, oh, what should I do in this situation? Oh, it's not in the Bible, Pastor. I don't know. Well, if your 12-year-old son or daughter brought you this same scenario, what would you tell them? See, you're trying to argue that smoking, and ain't nothing wrong with smoking, ain't nothing wrong with getting high on the weekend. Or is that what you're going to teach your 12-year-old kid? No, you ain't. So why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? You have the answers. You have the answer within you. You're going to tell a 12-year-old to go smoke? You're going to tell a 12-year-old to go, it's okay to get high on the weekend? You're going to tell the 12-year-old, yeah, go ahead and smart off to your authority. That's someone in authority. Go ahead and backtalk your coach. Go ahead and quit. You're going to tell your 12-year-old to quit? Huh? I'm just saying, if you were dishing out advice and counsel, well, do it yourself. Pretend you're the 12-year-old that and I'm just saying, I know you know the answer. You know the answer. You don't act like you don't. You know the answer. You know what you should do.
No, instead they want to use that excuse. I do what I do because
If your 16-year-old son or daughter brought home the woman or guy that you're winking at and you're talking to, and you were to say, well, tell me about this person. What's their history? What's their profile? And they started saying, well, he's a good guy. He just, I mean, don't ignore the gang tattoos and ignore the felonies and ignore the this and ignore the that and ignore this and that and yeah, and he doesn't have a job and he's homeless and he's got all this and that and he doesn't have a driver's license and he doesn't see his kids only once a month and all this and that. Oh, really? Sound like you picked the real winner. Huh? You're going to be like, yeah, I think you should go get in bed with them. Is that what you're going to tell your 16-year-old? Well, then why the fuck are you doing it? Why are you even looking? And you've had all of 15 minutes of conversation, just glances of eyeballs and maybe passing a note. And if you total up all the conversation that you've had in passing, in the back room, in the lunchroom, it would total up to all of 15 minutes because it was only 20 seconds here and 30 seconds there, and then maybe it was a minute here, and we said hi in the hall, and then we maybe got a note passed, and then I told so-and-so to ask a question for me, and this was the response that I got, and blah, 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 blah. And it all totals up to a complete total of 15 minutes, but man, I want to get in bed with them. Oh, no, I'm not saying I want to get in bed with them. No, we're going to keep it pure. We're going to develop a relationship. What? Off of 15 minutes of total knowledge of this person that you've had you got 15 minutes of knowledge from a history of lying, cheating, everything, because there ain't no one in rehab. Can I just tell you this? Everybody here is a liar. That's harsh, but you don't become a substance abuser and not be a liar. I don't think when you were 13 or 14, when you first took that hit, you were like, hey mom, hey dad, hey teacher, hey whatever, just want to let you know I'm going out and I'm getting drunk. No, you snuck around, you did it all in deceit. All you're getting high, all of that, and especially all at the beginning, it's all done in deceit and cover up and in darkness and woven into lies. Where'd the money go? You have a story for that. Where were you at last night? You have a story for it. It's all lies. But hey, let's pick our next mate. Let's pick our next great person, Mr. Right, from this pool. Huh? Geniuses, right? That's a genius idea. So my advice would be, you need to go through this program right here with blinders on. Because you do not know what you're getting yourself into. Not at all. I know, and I'm not allowed to tell you. I can tell you what every single one of these ladies has going on in their life and how jacked up it is. Wonderful, beautiful people. But you do not want to deal with their baggage and their instability. And I can tell you every single jacked up issue that these guys have. And you do not want to take that on or drag that in to your life that you're trying to build. And put everything at risk that you're trying to gain back Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Okay? Men and women are a dime a dozen. They're getting popped out every few seconds. I can just tell you. And that's all you guys are doing is looking at men and women. It's just a men and women. These aren't mates and these aren't spouses. These aren't companions. They're men and they're women. And they're a dime a dozen. And you can do drugs, and I can tell you what the side effects will be. Okay? Y'all know the side effects, and y'all know how you respond when you do drugs and alcohol, right? But can I tell you what? You get a hold of the wrong person, you do not even know the extent of the side effects of that. It's incalculable. Because they have something called a free will that cannot be calculated. And a heart that is deceitfully wicked that they don't even know what they're going to do next. Can I just tell you that? Do you know? You don't even know. You do not know what you're going to do next. And yet you're trying to convince somebody else who's a stranger. You're almost like, trust me. You don't even trust yourself. Come on. I mean, if you're smart, you don't trust yourself. So why are you trying to convince someone else to trust you? I'll tell you why. It's because of what you got between your legs, and that's it. It's a male-female thing. But it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. You know that you can't trust yourself. If you're smart, you know that. So why are you in here trying to convince someone on the other side of the room to trust you? Okay? We're all here working on ourselves. Let's work on ourselves for more before we take 30 seconds of conversation and a flip of the air and a fluttering of the eyelids and start thinking we're going to do something in the future. This person. Please. All you got to do is ask yourself, what would you tell your 13-year-old daughter? Or all you got to do is ask yourself, how many times have I thought that before? And then how did it work out for you? Huh? So why are you trusting yourself? Why is this so different? It ain't. Let me just tell you, it ain't. Okay? So shut it down. Tell yourself no. And for you mothers, don't expect for you to ever to be able to control your kid and tell them no and tell them to stay away from the things that they're supposed to stay away from when you can't do it yourself. So why don't you start learning the word no for yourself? Because more is caught than taught. You can say no all you want to, but then when you're laying down to every yes and every desire and every want to and everything like that, then your children are going to follow you exactly the way you do it. So you want to hook up with a guy in rehab? Trust me, your kids will be in rehab hooking up with guys that are in rehab. So pick your path for your kids, lady. You're choosing it right now. And the same for you fathers. And you know it, because most of you have a story about your parents, and here you are. And probably most of you, when we were little, we were like, I'm not going to be like that. But yet here we are. Right? Listen, I mean, that's all of us. That's what I'm talking about, is like the power. That's the power that we have. That's the power of identity and personage. That's the power of giving something that money can't buy, security and faith, and instilling this stuff in them. I mean, come on, people. We have that power. You have that ability, but you got to be intentional about it. You got to know what you're doing. You got to stop shortchanging, your future. You're trading your future for right now. Don't do it. Work on your future. Okay? Yeah. All right. That's it. It's the end of the rant. I wanted to get to that. I wanted to get to that fraternization part so bad. I had to just go an extra 20 minutes and get it in. How did I weave that in?
Look in front of your foot.